Hey everyone, Nubkeks here. Hope you're having a great new year so far. I've got a few plans here on the channel for some new stuff to do. I'm going to be trying to knuckle down properly during this week and get back to work. I don't know about you guys, but I definitely find when I take a week or two off working full time on making videos and stuff, I tend to lose a lot of motivation. It's hard to get back into it. I mean, let me know if you guys have similar struggles. I'd be interested to hear. But I actually realized I haven't done videos on the other two new affixes that came out in Shadowlands. I almost included them in this video and decided, you know what? I'll do those in another video when they come back around in the weekly rotation. But this week we are talking about inspiring. The affixes for this week, we have tyrannical, inspiring, necrotic, and of course prideful. So inspiring, this is the first time, well, sort of the first time this has shown up as an affix. The first time it's here as an official affix, that's for sure. However, if you guys played during the Wrath of Vishara, Rise of Vishara, Rise of Skywalker, I don't know, Dark Knight Rises, whatever it was called, but the beguiling affix, right? Back in the Ashara patch in BFA. Well, there are actually three different sorts of emissaries, three different ads that gave different buffs to their packs that they were in. Well, one of them was actually the inspiring affix, essentially. So this gives mobs a 15-meter aura around them that makes all of their allies nearby immune to crowd control and interrupt effects. Right? This means you can't kick those dangerous spells, you can't stun them, you can't knock them back, nothing. Now, the inspiring mob itself can be crowd controlled. It's fully vulnerable to all that sort of stuff. It's just their team that they are empowering, so you can definitely play around it that way. I'd say there's sort of three broad ways you're going to play around this, sort of in order of difficulty. The easiest way, and definitely recommended on some of the more difficult packs for sure, would be to simply CC the inspiring ad. You know, hit it with a freezing trap from a hunter, something like that, and then pull the other mobs away from that inspired mob. Either kill those mobs or get them low enough that you feel the pack is nicely under control, and then bring the inspiring mob into the pack, and cool. That's a pretty easy way to do it. A little bit harder of a way to do it would be to just simply pull them all together in a pack and try to kill the inspiring mob before anything bad happens because of the other ads being CC immune. So a little bit of a DPS race there. The benefit, of course, is that you can get more damage out. The downside is that it's kind of high risk, high reward. Then I think the third way, definitely the most difficult way, though potentially with the biggest payoff, would be to pull the entire pack together and then focus really on AoE damage instead of like single target burning down the inspired mob. Just doing your full AoE rotation to get as much just overall DPS as possible. And then when dangerous kicks or dangerous abilities that need to be CC'd come in, you'd have to do something like use a knockback on the inspired mob, not get more than 15 yards away, so that the rest of the mob pack loses their CC immunity. Then you CC those important spell casts and then bring the inspired mob back in. So that's obviously very, very difficult. I would not recommend that for most players to even bother with. I'd probably stick mostly with the first one and some with the second one and some easy packs. But it is a potential thing that you could do with a really, really coordinated team to sort of maximize your damage output, especially if you're pushing higher keys. But yeah, again, I think it's pretty high risk, high reward as well. Overall, though, I'd say that this affix this week particularly, isn't too bad, and the reason being that it's going to be an awful lot harder to deal with this affix on fortified weeks, where the regular mobs are a lot tougher. On this tyrannical week, it's really the bosses that are dangerous, so even if you do make a mistake with inspiring, and have some spells go off that you really would rather have not go off, you can kind of get away with it a little bit. We did 3 dungeons today. We did Mist of Tyrannus Scythe, we did Spires of Ascension, and Theater of Pain. And honestly, inspiring in those dungeons wasn't too bad. I definitely think that the thing you're looking for this week is really which dungeons are difficult on tyrannical. That is really the measure of where you are going to struggle. The other affix, of course, coming alongside inspiring, aside from prideful, is necrotic. Necrotic was, as a DPS player, necrotic's probably your favorite affix. You're kind of going, yes, this is a tank affix, a healer affix. I don't need to worry about it. With necrotic, essentially every hit against your tank builds a stack of necrotic, which is reducing the healing received by the tank, so they have to do some kiting and things. Honestly, they're probably doing quite a lot of kiting as is in Shadowlands anyway, so it sort of ties into that playstyle fairly well. But certainly, poor old tanks, if you have to kite, but there's an inspired mob pack nearby that's immune to crowd control. A lot of tanks will find that pretty tough. So definitely watch out for that. But yeah, it's those necrotic tyrannical bosses, that's where it gets scary. So I think one dungeon to absolutely watch out for sure, Plaguefall, I think is going to be incredibly hard. The reason being the third mob, the big spider one, she is obviously summoning in a whole bunch of adds. They're hitting the tank, so Necrotic is going to stack up really high on the tank, on top of that boss being somewhat difficult on Tyrannical anyway. Then the final boss in Plaguefall, Stradama, she is absolutely a nightmare in Tyrannical too, so that's a dungeon to definitely avoid. I mean, even the first two bosses are tough, so I think that's a very hard dungeon on Tyrannical. I'd say the Necrotic Wake, the second boss on Necrotic Wake, Amarth, the Destroyer, whatever, the big dude on the big dragon that summons in all the skeletons, he is also, I think, extremely hard on Tyrannical, and with Necrotic making that worse for your tank again, I think that is very, very tough. That is a run killer. Spires of Ascension, funny enough, sort of similar to Necrotic Wake in the sense the second boss is the real nightmare boss. Vertinax, I think is his name. He was pretty rough, obviously, on Tyrannical. This is the boss that keeps leaving those patches on the ground that are shooting out these projectiles across the room. He goes into then a charge up phase, a recharge phase, where they just start spewing out these massive waves of projectiles. Really difficult to dodge. That boss is a nightmare for sure on Spires of Ascension. You know, you kind of want to make sure you have your Prideful buff going into that boss, Bloodlust on him, and just combat potions, everything. Just burn that guy down. Kill him as fast as possible, because the fight just gets harder and harder and harder and harder. And yeah, hopefully you kill him. If you wipe to him, your key is probably dead. But for the rest of Spires of Ascension, it's not actually that bad. On Tyrannical, it's not that bad, and definitely a dungeon that you can clear through, and you can do in time. I said Mist of Tyrna Scythe, there's only 3 bosses in there. That was another one that we did. And Mist of Tyrna Scythe is, I think, again, pretty damn easy this week. The bosses aren't that hard on Tyrannical. Some of the inspiring packs can be a little tricky, but yeah, I think Mist of Tyrna Scythe is kind of one of everyone's favorite dungeons, one of them. This expansion, it's just a really well-designed dungeon, so I think that's a good one to run too. Theater of Pain, if you're kind of coming at it from the first couple of weeks of the expansion, I think you'd be expecting this to be extremely hard. It's a 5-boss dungeon, right? On Tyrannical, that's got to be hard. It's actually not too bad, though. It's not too bad. Theater of Pain got nerfed quite a bit. The Lich boss, especially, you'll notice that he puts out more grabby hands. He has kind of, his abilities don't overlap as badly, that sort of thing. So, yeah, Theater of Pain, excuse me, isn't as bad as you might think. I think it's pretty doable this week. I think the one boss to definitely watch out for in there, I think, is very hard. Apart from the last boss, is pretty damn tough. But Gorchop, the big patchwork type boss, he is actually pretty tough. I don't know if it's just a thing in my head, because he seems to just have so much health. It takes so long to kill the guy. But he definitely punishes your tank a lot. There's some necrotic stacks coming in from extra adds. So I think that is a pretty tough fight for sure. But again, if you can probably try to get your route to have Prideful going into that boss, try to take him down. What we did was we used Prideful on him, but then we saved Bloodlust for the final boss when she went to her 50% phase. So that's how we sort of did it. We split those tools up, and that helped us clear through Theater of Pain. And yeah, actually there wasn't too much pain. It wasn't too bad. But yeah, that's most of the dungeons. I would also recommend probably, I would say Sanguine Depths is going to be fairly tough on Tyrannical, with Necrotic as well. Again, Inspiring isn't too terrible, but a little bit tricky because you don't have as much room to maneuver in that dungeon. I definitely think the Executor or Executioner, I can never remember his name, but the guy who spawns in little ads, and there's quite a lot of raid damage or party damage going on at the same time. That's pretty nasty, with Necrotic also stacking on the tank. He's going to be pretty tough, I think. I think the other side as well, pretty much all of the bosses in there are quite challenging. I mean, it's not as bad as, let's say, Tyrannical Grievous, that's for sure, but still, it's going to be a pretty tough dungeon on Tyrannical. Those are sort of the more difficult Tyrannical dungeons, and that is sort of your measure of this week. Overall, though, my opinion on Inspiring is that it's okay. I don't mind it. It's not the worst affix. I think it's just okay. I would say Spiteful of the new 3. We'll talk more about Spiteful when it comes back around. Spiteful, though, is definitely my favorite. That was quite a cool affix, and you could easily play around it, and it didn't slow you down too much. It was quite fun. Storming was a horrible pain in the ass. No, I don't think anyone particularly likes storming. I think that's inspiring. It's just okay. It's not the most exciting thing. It's not the most boring thing. It's fairly boring because, you know, it is something that we played with before during the beguiling affix. But it's not too difficult or anything, at least not on Tyrannical. So there you go, guys. I'm curious. Let me know, how have your dungeons been going this week? I feel like it's a pretty good week, actually, to be pushing some keys and doing well in. But thank you for watching. Also, this is my first time playing Discipline properly this expansion, trying to get back into the Disc Priest. Had a great time, actually. Found it much better than Holy Priest was in the dungeons, and I don't even have a legendary for Discipline. So there you are. But yeah, thank you for watching, everyone. I will see you all very, very soon. Bye-bye.